The way famous speakers give speeches. I once attended a dinner at the Sutari Hotel in New York City, where the main speaker was a high-ranking government official. His high position made him a distinguished guest. We waited with smiles, waiting to hear him speak, who promised to talk about his team's work. This intrigued almost all the businessmen in New York.
If you haven't subscribed yet, please click the subscribe button and click the bell icon to get more new videos.
He knew the details, more than he had said a dozen times, but he had no plan for what he was going to say, no pre-selected words, no pre-arranged form, no way. However, his courage, hampered by a lack of certainty, he rushed into the room like a blind man, not knowing which way to go, only that he was walking on the road. In short, his mind is complicated and complicated, so the mental food he brings to us now is like giving us ice cream first, followed by a bowl of soup, and when the soup is finished he brings fish sauce, and then puts the bean sprouts next. It is even worse when there is a bowl of food that has soup, ice cream, and red snapper mixed together. I have never seen anyone say that eating tea from the white tea leaves is like that before, no matter when or where. He tried to speak in a poetic way, but when he reached the end, he pulled a note from his pocket, claiming that his secretary was ready to leave it. No one doubted the truth of his claim, because the writing was as random as the scrap metal in a large truck. He held it upside down, his eyes trying to look at the other side of the page, trying to find light, trying to find a way out of the deep forest. He tried to speak, but to no avail. He apologized and asked for cold water to drink, his hands shaking. Then he spoke, stumbling forward, not being able to say a few more sentences. Then he apologized again and searched for the story in the writing. Time passed, minute by minute, which only made him more and more helpless, more and more embarrassed. The sweat that came from fear came out, dripping down his forehead. As he wiped his face, the towel shook with it. The audience, seeing his failure, expressed their sympathy and helped him to take care of himself. What was even more pitiful was that he continued to talk energetically, looking at his notes, apologizing, and drinking water. After finishing his speech, everyone felt that this useless speech was coming to an end, and we all felt relieved. When he sat down, the nervousness and anxiety of wanting to speak all came to an end. It was the first of many speeches I have ever heard. It was the most intense, and the speaker suffered the most humiliation, more than any speaker I have ever met. He spoke like Jean-Jacques Rousseau about a man who wrote a love letter to a woman and did not know what to begin with and what to end with. This story teaches us that when one's mind is scattered, Hennebert Senator says, the more one learns, the more one's mind will be scattered. No ordinary person can build a house without a blueprint. How can this person deliver a speech without a brief outline or a prepared plan? A speech is like a voyage. There must be a direction, a purpose, and a map, and a sea chart. So a person who sets out without a direction will end up in a place without a destination. I would like to paint the following Napoleonic phrase, painted red, 1 foot high, on the entrance doors of schools everywhere in the world, so that all students can learn the art of town talk. The art of war is a subject in which without careful consideration and deliberation, success is impossible. Town talk is like shooting a gun. Do you know this? And if you do you practice it regularly? No, most of them do not. Many speeches are planned, organized, and shaped with little more than a pinch of salt and pepper. What is the best and most effective way to organize your thoughts? No one can explain it precisely until they have studied all of them. New problems arise all the time, endless new questions that you, rightly, ask and answer yourself, over and over again. There are no hard and fast rules. However, I can only give a few brief examples from real people who show what it means to organize well.
The speech that won the championship in sentences. The following is a speech delivered several years ago to the National Association of Real Estate. It won first place in a competition with 27 speeches from other states in the United States. It would win again if there were a competition today. The speech is full of facts, well written, clear, interesting, and lively, with some parts that are good for reading and studying. Dear President and friends, let us look back 144 years ago, and this great nation, the United States of America, was born in my city of Philadelphia. It is only natural that this city should have a great record in history and be the property of a strong-willed American people who have made it not only the greatest industrial center, but also one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Philadelphia has a population of nearly 2 million, and our city is as large as Milwaukee, Boston, Paris, and Berlin combined. We have devoted nearly 8,000 acres to the development of parks, gardens, and avenues for the recreation, and enjoyment of our people, and to the enjoyment of a pure and clean atmosphere that should please every American. My friends, Philadelphia is not only a large, spacious, beautiful city, but also a place recognized everywhere in the world as the largest factory in the world. The reason it is called the world's largest factory is because we have over 400,000 workers working in 9,200 factories, turning out $100,000 worth of useful goods every 10 minutes of every working day. According to a famous statistician, no other district in the country is as productive as Philadelphia in the manufactures of furs, leather, sewing machines, batteries, automobiles, hats, iron, marine equipment, and many other important articles. We make one locomotive every 2 hours, day and night. More than half the population of the country rides the auto rickshaws made in Philadelphia. We make 1,000 cigars every minute. Last year, in 115 hosiery factories, we made 2 pairs of socks for men, women, and children in the country. We produce more carpets, large and small, than Great Britain and Ireland combined. In fact, our trade and industry, according to the Bank of England's report last year, amounted to a whopping that is $37 billion. This is enough money to pay for all the Liberty bonds in the country. But, my friends, we are very proud of the prosperity and the great industrial progress of our country. We are very proud again because this county is one of the greatest centers of medicine, the arts, and learning in the country. However, we are not at all proud of the fact that Philadelphia has more private homes than any other county in the world, with a total of 39,700 homes. If all these houses were built on a 25-foot lot in a single row extending from Philadelphia through this meeting place to Kansas City and extending to Denver, the total length would be 1,881 miles.
But what particularly interests me is the fact that in the number of those houses, there are tens of thousands of them owned and occupied by the workers of our country. So if a person owns land from the ground to the roof of his house, we need not worry about him contracting some foreign disease called socialism or communism. Philadelphia is not a vast land for political turmoil like Europe. Our towns, our educational institutions, and our great industries are all run by honest Americans, born in our country and inherited from our ancestors. Philadelphia is the capital of a great country and the true birthplace of American freedom. In this state, the first American flag was raised. In this state, the Congress of the United States first met. In this state, the Declaration of Independence was signed. In this state, and in this state which has the most beloved monuments in America, the spirit of liberty has inspired hundreds of thousands of its citizens, men, women, and children, to believe that we have been entrusted with a sacred duty, not to worship a golden calf, but to spread the American spirit far and wide, and to keep the flame of freedom burning brightly at all times. Therefore, by the grace of God, the present government of Washington, the administrations of Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt have been the driving force behind the whole human race to freedom. Consider how this speech is structured. Why has it been so successful? First of all, we notice that there is a proper beginning and an appropriate ending. This is considered a speech full of qualities that are more difficult to find and rarer to find than you might think. It starts at a point and then moves towards its goal, like a wild goose flapping its wings. It does not drag on for long, and it does not waste time. It is beautiful and prominent. They begin by talking about something in their own country that others cannot describe the importance of their own country. Namely, they point out that their country is the birthplace of this country of America. They declare that this country is the largest and most beautiful in the world. Such boasting is everywhere, repeated until it is deafening. This sentence alone cannot capture the attention of the audience much, and the speaker knows it well. So he helps the audience visualize the importance of Philadelphia's Great Hall by explaining that it has an area equal to Milwaukee, Boston, Paris, and Berlin combined. This is a vivid, clear, and expressive statement. It is interesting, it is strange, it scores high, it is deeply embedded in the emotions, better than the statistics that are all over the paper. Then they show that Philadelphia is a place that is known everywhere as the great factory of the world. Observe, is it true? It is similar to propaganda that makes people believe that. If they continue preaching, no one will believe it. But they do not do that. Instead, they stop and preach about the many goods in which the state is a leader: furs, leather, cloth, hats, sewing machines, iron, batteries, automobiles, and seagoing vessels.
Now, that doesn't sound like propaganda, does it? Philadelphia makes a locomotive every 2 hours, day and night. More than half the people of this great country ride in autos made in Philadelphia. Then we are amazed and say, "Wow, I never knew when I rode in the auto yesterday that it might have been one of those autos. I didn't know. Tomorrow I'll go and see where my county gets its autos from." Makes 1,000 cigars a minute. Makes 2 pairs of socks for men, women, and children in this country. We are even more impressed. Sometimes my favorite cigars and this pair of socks I'm wearing are made in Philadelphia. What does the speaker do next? He then goes back to the size of Philadelphia, which he mentioned earlier, to give us a fact he forgot to mention, you know? No, he will speak until the end, until there is no gap. We thank him very much for that. Speakers, there is nothing more confusing and complicated than talking from one thing to another and talking back and forth in a state of urgency, like a bat flying in the middle of the day. However, there are many speakers who do the same thing. They do not explain the points in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they preach them in the manner of a football captain who shouts to his team 27, 15, 44, 31, 3. This speaker, on the other hand, runs straight ahead at the appointed time, without turning back, without swerving left or right, no different from a train that runs straight, as they say. But there is one weak point in his speech, namely that he openly declares that Philadelphia is one of the greatest centers of medicine, art, and learning in the country. He only says this and then quickly moves on to something else. They use only 12 words to attract the attention of the mind to this fact, to make it real, to make it sink into the memory. Using only 12 words instead of a sentence that should have used 60 words and then disappearing does not achieve anything. It is true that it does not achieve anything.
The human mind does not work like the wire of a trapeze box. They spend too little time on this point, too broad, too vague, as if they are not interested in the results that almost aren't happening to the listener. What should they do? They know very well that they should build on this point with the Marshall technique they have just mentioned in showing the fact that Philadelphia is the factory of the world. They know very well that people have a stopwatch while they are talking, which allows them to speak for only 5 minutes, not even a second more, so they skip the details of some of these points or skip the little things in others. There are more private homes in Philadelphia than in any other state in the world. How should one make this point interesting and convincing? The first step is to cite the figure of 397,000. The second step is to visualize the number by saying if these houses were built on a 20-foot plot of land, they would stretch from Philadelphia through Kansas City and on to Denver, and the total length would be 1,881 miles. The listener may forget the number of houses that is being mentioned as an argument. At first, they mention the number that could cause damage, but they can confuse us into almost forgetting that number by showing us a new picture. Isn't that amazing? Even though there are many facts that people don't pay much attention to, those facts can be polished into the ear. This speaker can build a climax, make the heart beat, and stir the emotions. So in talking about this huge number of houses, they also talk about what makes them emotional. They talk about what those homeowners mean to the spirit of the country. They blame the imported disease called socialism and draw on historical facts and documents to inspire the hearts of their listeners with a sense of value and dignity. In this state, the American flag was first raised. In this state, the Congress of the United States of America. Philadelphia is hailed as the true birthplace of American freedom. Freedom is a word of fresh charm, a word so full of appeal that it has stirred up enthusiasm that millions have given their lives for it. The meaning in this sentence is beautiful in itself, but it is made even more so by the speaker, 1,000 times more striking, by the fact that America first assembled in this state where the Declaration of Independence was signed, in this state where the most beloved monument in America, the Independence Bell, has rung, to awaken to the belief of its millions, men, women, and children, that we have been entrusted with a sacred duty to carry out, which is not a prayer for a golden calf, but a prayer for the American spirit to spread far and wide, and to keep the flame of freedom burning brightly at all times. Thus, with the consent of God, the present government of Washington, the government of Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt may cause a great stir among all mankind to obtain freedom. This is the climax. It is a very difficult task to prepare a speech of this kind, but even with the appreciation of the meaning of the sentence, it may be disappointed or even ineffective if it is delivered in a flat, uninspired manner. But in reality, the writer is the speaker himself, with a passion and enthusiasm that comes from the deepest integrity. It is only a little surprising that this winning speech won the Chicago State Prize. Dr. Cornwell's way of planning a speech. As I said, there is no hard and fast rule for how to prepare a speech. There is no formula, no theory or method that is right for everyone, or most speeches. However, planning a speech in just a few steps, as I will discuss below, can be helpful in some cases. The late Dr. Russell O. Cornwell, author of the famous poem The Diamond in the Rough, once told me that he used the following short rule when preparing his speeches. 1. State your facts. 2. Give reasons to support those facts. 3. Ask for follow-up. Many people find the following structure very helpful and very engaging. 1. Point out something that is wrong. 2. Suggest a solution. 3. Ask for cooperation. Or, to put it another way, 1. This is a situation that needs to be addressed. 2. What should we do about it? 3. For these reasons, you are also helping to provide assistance. A brief plan for a speech is as follows. 1. Find something that will arouse interest. 2. Build credibility. 3. Tell the truth. Educate the audience about the value of your proposal. 4. Ask for a driving force that will motivate people to act. How famous people plan their speeches. Former Senator Albert J. Beveridge wrote a short book called The Art of Public Speaking. A speaker must be an expert in the subject he is to address, said this famous political campaigner. This means that all the facts must be gathered and organized into a study group, condensed into a concise, after you have gathered the facts on a subject, consider how they will benefit you. In this way, your speech will have something new and energetic in it, a story that is lively and attractive. You will plunge into it, then write your thoughts down in as much detail and reason as you can. In other words, find the light of both sides of the truth, then express opinions that make those facts clear and specific. I have prepared, said Reverend Wilson when asked to describe his style, having prepared the various reports I'm going to deliver, I arrange them in my mind in the order in which they are to be delivered. That is, I put together the bones of the story to be told, and then I write the main points on paper. I am accustomed to writing about the essentials, and I know that it saves a lot of time. When I have written them, I type them myself. When I type them, I change the words, correct the sentences, and add a few more. Theodore Roosevelt prepared his speeches in his own peculiar way. That is, he dug up all the data, considered their value, evaluated the results, and then decided to use them with a feeling of conviction and certainty. Then there was a piece of writing on the table in front of him. He began to dictate to the secretary, to take short notes, speaking very quickly, so that his voice was clear, natural, and lively. Then he would take the typed paper and read it over carefully, correcting, adding, and highlighting it until the paper was covered in ink marks, and then tell the secretary to type it again. I have never succeeded in anything without hard work, painstaking scrutiny, careful planning, and long-term planning, he said. He would often invite critics to listen to him while he was typing or while he was reading his speech. He did not argue with them about whether his words were sharp or not, because he was firmly committed to them and would not allow them to change. He wanted them to advise him on how to speak, not what words to use. Time and again, he would take the typed original, review it, correct it, and make improvements, and then send the original speech to the newspaper for publication. Of course, he couldn't remember it all, and when he spoke, he didn't read it, he just spoke out loud. That's why the speeches he actually delivered were often different from some of the ones he typed. However, the fact that he took the time to have the secretary take notes and revise his speech was considered the best preparation. It helped him remember the content and sequence of the main points well, helped him speak in a rhythmic manner with confidence, with a clear flow of words and a smooth flow of speech, which is difficult to find any other way to use better than this method. Oliver Lord told me to give a speech in a written form, to speak rapidly about the subject you were going to say, to act as if you were actually speaking in front of an audience, is the best preparation and practice. Many students of public speaking find that they get the best results by giving a speech with a tape recorder and then listening to it themselves. Is it really that great? Indeed, I think that sometimes, besides giving light to your speech, it can also give you advice, which is a very useful practice. I wholeheartedly support this method. The practice of writing down a large number of speeches that you are going to say will force you to use your brain. It will make your thoughts clear, help to fix the words in your memory, reduce the number of stray thoughts to a minimum, and help to improve your vocabulary. Benjamin Franklin wrote in his autobiography, how did he become a better speaker? How did he improve himself so that he could easily use appropriate words? And how did he train himself to be able to share his thoughts in a group? His life story is an immortal work of literature. Unlike most literature, it is easy to read and fascinating, almost considered a rule of simple and straightforward English usage. Anyone who wants to be a speaker and writer can read this book with great interest and benefit. I hope you will like the passage I have quoted below. At one time, I saw a strange magazine called The Third Rule. I loved reading it over and over again. It was so captivating. I found the words very well written, and I wanted to imitate some of them. With this idea in mind, I took a piece of paper and wrote down every sentence of the good articles, and I did it in a few days without looking at the magazine again. I tried to write the stories. Each story was as long and well developed as the magazine, using the most appropriate words I could think of. Then I compared the magazine, The Third Rule, with my writing, and when I realized that I was wrong, I immediately corrected it. This made me know a lot of words, and I could write them all the time. If I had known those words before, I probably would have been able to compose them into simple sentences. This is because words that have the same meaning but are different in length and shortness, or different high and low tones, which must be used according to the circumstances and appropriate occasions of those words. Therefore, I considered it necessary to find out the differences of each word, and because of my nature to record those differences in my mind, I finally had knowledge of this field. Therefore, I took the important things and rearranged them again. Then, sometimes I became confused and confounded, but before I could start to arrange them into complete sentences and write them out, I had to spend weeks reducing the confusion and organizing them. This training helped me to learn how to group my thoughts into groups by comparing the newly arranged writing with the old writing. At that time, I saw many shortcomings and tried to correct them well. Sometimes I also enjoy the fact that when I use slightly different words but mean the same thing, it helps to improve my language skills, and I think that soon I will be able to become a writer who can use English, because this is the task that I have been trying to imagine the most. Take notes. We have already suggested that you write down or jot down on a piece of paper when you have a unique idea or example that comes to mind. Take your notes and divide them into piles, one pile representing the main points of your speech. Reduce them as you go, like sifting through the chaff until you have only the first-class grain of rice left, and even that first-class grain must be sifted out. Anyone who is doing it right will use only a small amount of raw material. Continue to revise this little by little until you have finished your speech. Keep your mind focused on your goal and constantly reflect on what you can do to improve and use your words appropriately. A good speaker, after he is finished speaking, knows that his speech has 4 stages. 1. Preparation. 2. Delivery. 3. The press will comment on how he delivered. And 4. On the way home, it means he has finished speaking. Should short notes be used while speaking? Although Lincoln was a brilliant orator, when he was in the White House, he usually wrote out his speeches, even his cabinet meetings. In fact, he read them from a paper copy of his inaugural address because he had to say everything exactly as it was written in the official paper that would be kept as a historical document. This was a matter of great importance that could not be left unspoken. But before that, in Illinois, Lincoln had never used notes in his town hall speeches. It would tire the listeners and make them wonder, he said. Who among us would dare to argue with him? Don't notes ruin 50% of your interest in listening to a speech? Don't notes prevent the precious intimacy between speaker and listener? Don't notes create a false atmosphere? Don't notes create the impression that you are a trustworthy person and have enough reserves of energy to speak? I would like to emphasize that you should take notes during your preparation, in detail and in large numbers. You may need to use them while you are practicing speaking alone. You may also feel more comfortable. If you keep them in your pocket when you are facing the audience, they are like a hatchet or an axe on a train. These are kept ready for emergencies, such as when a train crashes, breaks down, or other unforeseen events. If you must use notes, make them as short and large as possible on large paper. Arrive at the place of delivery early and keep them next to your book on your desk. You will be able to look at them when necessary, but try to hide this weakness from the audience. However, do not use notes in all cases. It is used only in cases of necessity to increase efficiency. For example, some people, when they start giving their first few speeches, are often so nervous and excited that they forget all the sentences they have prepared, making them stray from the target, forget the previously rehearsed content, and fall off the main road into the ditches in the corners. Therefore, if you are a new speaker, you need to have short notes in your hand, just like a baby learning to walk for the first time who has to hold on to his hands, but he doesn't have to hold on until he grows up. Shame on him.
Don't memorize every word. You shouldn't read and try to memorize every word of a speech. This is a waste of time and is harmful. Despite this warning, some people still read this article and want to try it. If you do this, what will they think when they stand and speak? Do they think about what they're saying? No, they are not talking. They are just trying to remember what they have memorized. They are using their minds backward, not forward. It is a step backward, contrary to human nature. All speeches will be stiff, unnatural. Please don't do this, because it is a waste of time and energy to do useless things. It will ruin them. When you are discussing important business matters with a committee, do you sit down and memorize what you should say, every word? Should you do that? Of course not, unless you meditate so that new ideas can clearly emerge in your brain. You can take some notes, look up some data, and say to yourself, I'm going to propose this idea. That idea. I'm going to say that this thing should be implemented for these reasons. And then you present your reasons and give concrete examples as evidence to support them. Is this how you prepare to speak in a business meeting? Is this how you prepare to speak in a speech? Why don't you use this kind of common sense in your speech preparation? General Grant at Appomattox. When General Lee asked General Grant to write the terms of surrender, General Grant, the commander-in-chief of the Union Army, turned to General Parker and told him to bring him the paper. Grant wrote in his diary, "As I put the paper to the paper, I had no idea what the first words of the terms would be. I only knew in my mind what they were, and I wished to have them written down clearly to avoid confusion." General Grant, you don't need to know the first words. You have an idea. You have a conviction. You have something that you need to write down clearly. The result is that your own words flow out without any effort. Everyone is the same. They think they have something good already. If you doubt it, try punching someone in the face with your fist, and when they get up, you will find that their words will come out automatically, without any effort. Over 2,000 years ago, Horace wrote, "There is no need to search for words, just find truth and ideas, and the unsearched words will flow out of them like water." Once you have a solid idea in your mind, then start practicing your speech from beginning to end. Do it silently, mentally, while you are getting ready for work, walking down the street, waiting for a bus, and in the car. Confine yourself in a room and speak out loud. Make your manner and speech lively, quick, and energetic.
The Reverend Canon Knock of Canterbury Cathedral in England says that a preacher will not have real oratory from a single sermon unless he has heard it 6 times. So do you expect your sermon to have real oratory without practicing it many times? During your practice, imagine that there is a large audience in front of you. Imagine it as strongly as you can until it actually happens. This will help you feel like you are delivering a sermon that you have mastered for a long time.
Why did farmers think Lincoln was the ultimate lazy person? If you have practiced speaking in this way, you have modeled yourself in detail on many speakers. Lloyd George, when he was a member of the Debaters Association in his native Wales, liked to walk the country lanes often, talking as he walked, and making gestures at trees and fence posts. When Lincoln was a young man, he would walk 30 or 40 miles back and forth, often to hear famous speakers like Breck Enrich deliver speeches. When he returned home, he would think of the speeches and be amazed and inspired to become an orator like them. Once he called the farm laborers to sit around him in the middle of the field, and he would sit on a stump and tell them entertaining stories. The peasants were furious with Lincoln, who they called Cicero the Fool, or a super slacker, and who they said made the peasants lose their minds with his jokes and speeches. Henry Herbert Essling became a town speaker by joining the Oxfordshire Debating Society as a laborer, but later founded his own. Woodrow Wilson learned to speak in town from the Debating Society. Henry W. Bester, the powerful Edmund Peck, the Englishman Bethwell, and Lewiston all did the same. Elihu trained by speaking before the VMCA Literary Society on 23rd Street in New York. If you study the lives of great speakers, you will see that they practice hard. That is, they practice. They practice, and the people who make the fastest progress in urban speaking are the ones who practice the hardest. Maybe you don't have time to practice, you know? If so, follow the style of Joseph Madden. He bought a morning newspaper. When he rode the bus to work, he would cover his head with it so that the people on the bus wouldn't disturb him. Then, instead of reading the news, gossiping and scolding each other daily, which was useless, he would take the time to think and plan his speech. John C. M. was a good man with a busy life as a railroad commissioner and a senator. Despite this, while working both jobs, he still found time to give regular speeches every night. "I don't let it get in the way of my business," he said. "All my speeches are prepared when I get home from work in the evening." We all have 3 hours a day to do what we like. That's all Darwin spent working because of his poor health. Spending only 3 hours out of 24 hours helped him gain fame because he used it wisely and thoroughly. Theodore Roosevelt, when he was president, used to spend 5 minutes before noon talking to each guest. However, he kept a newspaper near him so that he could read during the few seconds between the departure and arrival of a guest. You need to have time to relax and change from the hectic daily routine. Your speaking practice should be done in between. The best way is to give a speech in pure poetry, because it is also a time of relaxation with your family members at home.
Summary of Principles, Chapter 3. 1. Napoleon said, "The art of war is a subject that cannot be successfully pursued without careful calculation and deliberation." This is true. In speech-making, it is like shooting a gun, and like sailing a ship at sea, one must have a map. He who starts without a destination will end up in a place without a destination. 2. There are no absolute rules for the preparation of ideas, and construction of sentences in any speech. Every speech has its own problems, each one unique to the speaker. 3. The speaker must make a point thoroughly. Once he has made a point, do not go back and repeat it. Look at the #1 sample speech on Philadelphia.
Be careful not to jump from one point to another and then return to the same point without direction, like a bat flying around in broad daylight. 4. Dr. Cornwallis left behind several types of speech outlines. A. State the facts. B. Give reasons that fit the facts. C. Suggest action. 5. You can find many benefits from planning such an outline, such as A. Point out something that is wrong. B. Point out the solution. C. Suggest action. 6. This is a good outline for a speech. A. Find something that will interest you. B. Gain credibility. C. State your truth. D. Ask for attention and encourage action. 7. The two sides of the truth of every story, Senator Albert J. Beverett advised, must be gathered, grouped, studied, summarized, tested, and made to appear true. Then consider all the facts and see how they will benefit you. 8. Before speaking in public, Ling Tuo always sought to reason out his ideas properly, just as he did in arithmetic. When he was 40 years old and after becoming a U.S. representative, he studied Euclid's arithmetic to see if his statements were just empty talk or if they had solid reasoning. 9. When Theodore Roosevelt prepared a speech, he would dig up all the facts, consider their value, then speak quickly, have the secretary take notes, edit them, and then have them take notes again. 10. If you have a tape recorder, record your speech and play it back for later review. 11. Using notes can ruin the impact of a speech by about 50%. Avoid. Never read your speech aloud, except for formal reasons, because the audience will have a hard time listening to it read aloud. 13. After you have researched and prepared your speech, think about it and practice it quietly, such as while walking down the street and finding a place where you can be alone. Then practice speaking from beginning to end, practicing your movements and acting as if you were giving a real speech. Create the illusion that there is a large audience in front of you. The more you do this, the more relaxed you will be when giving the actual speech.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.